Hello there and welcome back to another Friday night for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter from a new location, from a new country, from somewhere that is not Italy. It's so weird for me to still think that I am no longer living in Italy. In my last episode, I spoke about leaving Italy and why I left and what's been going on in my life, the reasoning for that. And I actually was looking at the footage when I was editing it, and I saw that I actually had a lot of unused footage that I really wanted to address in an episode at some point, talking about a subject that I get asked about quite often, and especially in the past, say 2.5-ish years since I moved to Rovigo, about living there, what I think about it, what's going on, and how is life there. And even more recently, I've received emails saying, hey, it's been a couple of years since you moved there. Do you still feel the same? What do you think? What's going on? What are your opinions about this little city in the Veneto? But just before we get into this episode, a huge thank you to those of you who helped to keep this project going through rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon or patreon.com/rafaeldifuria, or because it is that holly jolly season. It is not too late for those stocking stuffers or that little something for yourself. That's it. I'm moving to Italy. Pizza, pasta, amore, and plenty more can be found on rafaeldifuria.com/NYAG Gear, store.rafaeldifuria.com. Or if you are here on YouTube, all of the links are down below. And thank you so much to those of you who have already bought the shirts, mugs, onesies, and more, because they really do also help make a difference in the ability for this project to be able to continue. So let's just get into the rest of this episode and roll that intro. Regarding living in Rovigo, I really like this little town, this little city. I will say I have had thoughts. Do I see myself living here forever, like on a permanent basis, like for the rest of time? And that's something that I can't say I'm too would have been until this point, too confident about. I'd had that thought in my mind. Is this the place that I want to stay? Because Italy, like I said, was the plan. But Rovigo more and more felt like it could be the place that I could end up. But it would also depend, because also when I made the announcement that this announcement was coming, there were some people that seemed to think either I must be getting married or I'm going to America and anything can happen. But I'm just saying that I'm definitely not getting married, still happily single. And that's something that I will say is that here in Rovigo, that staying here as a single person, it's fine. I mean, not a lot going on, I will say. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the best place to come if you are single, but if you somehow met somebody from here, and this is what I would probably say for any small town in Italy, that if you are dating somebody from there and move to their town, that's going to make things in that place a lot easier for your transition. And that I would say is probably the most ideal for moving to a smaller town. In Rovigo, say you move here as a young family, there will be certain aspects for those kids, or even like say if I were to get in a relationship now and the woman was from somewhere else and then we had a kid, and none of us would be Rovigotti, like locals. I think that's how you say it. There's certain words that escape my mind from time to time, but I'm pretty sure it's Rovigotti, like the people from here, that the child wouldn't get dialect at home, and they might get some at school, but they would still be kind of an outsider, even if the mother was from another part of the country. But even there was a guy who I've met here, and actually not just one, but a number of people who I've met who've lived here, that they were originally from someplace else, either another country or another part of the country. But one person in particular, he came here, I think when he was like 16 or 17. His sister was a little bit younger. I don't know. He must have told me this when he was like 20 or something like that. And when he was in high school, he did learn the dialect. He was able to pick that up pretty quickly. But being an outsider, he felt that. He felt that he didn't have that same in. Of course, like in Italy, when you go to school, like you stay with your classmates through like high school. Like that whole time, it's the same class. You don't change groups within the day. The teachers will change out. So that's something that creates a different kind of bond, and bonds that are also created a little bit at a younger age. And also, of course, like when you're from anywhere, even if you go to the States and you move to a smaller town and you're from somewhere else, yeah, it's harder to break in. I've had that happen to me when I was a teenager. But he said his sister had an easier time and that she was more accepted. But this guy was like a fine person. Like he wasn't like not any kind of strange person or anything, like really nice young guy. And I've heard this from men and women who grew up here and are now adults and have had that they, even though they've been here for a long time and they did go to school here, that they still do feel on the outside in some ways. And even individuals who have had children here since the children were young and raised them, and that's something that I do question if I would want my children to grow up with that. And I'm not even close to having that children in my life. Still single, like I said. But of course, being 30, these are thoughts that go through my mind. And this would be the same really in any country, that these problems would come up. It's not something specific to Rovigo. But there are some really nice things about living here. There's some really great restaurants, not a ton to choose from, but there's some good choices here. We just recently had one poke place open up, and like maybe a 2-minute walk away, another poke place just opened. This past 2 years, there have been a lot of places that have closed down and some empty store fronts. But now there are new places that are coming around. Like there's a wine bar that just opened up like maybe a month or two ago. And it looks like there might be another one coming very soon, and different stores that seem to be popping up. But again, it's still very small as a city. It's not bad. I really like the quieter lifestyle here, but there are times that it does maybe get a little too quiet, and I do wish maybe there was a little bit more access to something going on. But even then, like if you're somebody that enjoys opera or theater, like other than a good portion of the past 2 years, before that, these types of activities have been possible to go and partake in. Now, the situation's changed. These do happen, but just in a different way. But would I recommend for somebody to come here and buy a property? I'll answer this, but not specifically to Rovigo. I wouldn't recommend anybody to just land and buy a property. I think that's one of the most absurd ideas that somebody could do. You really do need to live in a place for 2 years before you know if you want to call that place home, if you really can call that place home. And after a good amount of time here in Rovigo, I could go either way on that. So maybe there are some people who really would feel at home here and really would feel like that this is the place for them, that this is their community, that this is the place that they want their children to grow up, or where they want to live out the rest of their life. There will be people like that, but there will be a lot of people who don't feel that way. It's also, you have to consider work. And if you're a non-Italian speaker, finding work locally may be difficult. You might have a couple of options of places that might accept you, but you still would need some Italian, probably more than just some Italian. But the Rovigo does seem like it's kind of on the up and up. And it's kind of interesting because, like I've mentioned in previous episodes, that Amazon opened up a second facility in this area. So it's kind of become this hotspot all of a sudden, even more so. It's been, I think, slowly building up over the past decade or so, but even more recently, it's become harder to find apartments here. Even in the time that I've lived here, to find a rental has become increasingly difficult. When I was first thinking about moving here, there were apartments that were on the market literally for months and months and months. Now, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the same, and the prices are going up, it seems. You can find something that would still be less expensive than in other parts of the world, or even other parts of Italy, to be fair. But overall, it is becoming this kind of like interesting little place. So I would say it's worth taking a look at, as long as you are okay with small town life, small city life, because you have to consider that not all of the town is like the pretty picturesque center, there are parts that are outside of the center that really don't look like that at all. And so you have a mix, like you have some like cuter areas in the center, but then you just go just maybe a block or half a block out of this main area and things look very, very different. So that's something to consider, is what are you looking for? There's not going to be one city, of course, that covers everything where everything will be perfect. But you do have like the really nice piazza that you can go sit on, and it's safe here for the most part. I mean, like there are places, for example, and I don't advise anybody to do this, but I would say there are places where I have lived or have traveled to where leaving your cell phone on the table just simply wasn't a good idea. But there have been times where I've seen friends leave their phones here and nothing happened to it. Nobody came by to grab it. It just was there. Even they went up to go to the bathroom, came back, no problem. Other places I've been, ain't no way. I mean, there are still people here that don't even lock their bikes. Or what you'll see a lot of times is the front wheel locked only to the main frame of the bike, and it's not even locked to anything else. So from a quality of life perspective, like, yeah, things are actually pretty good here. I do like it. And that's one of the reasons why I've stayed and not been actively looking to move to another part of the country, because you have a lot here. I'm not going to say it's perfect, and I'm not going to say that I would recommend it to everybody, but I do think it's an interesting place to consider. I mostly came here for convenience for various factors in my life, for work and for me to be able to travel for work if I have to do that. There are certain nice things like the train line that it exists on here that I can be in a small town, but still have access to other places in the country, like, or even in Europe, that I can get to an airport quite easily. And I have multiple airports to choose from. So this is something that is really nice about this town here. The vast majority of the people that are here are very kind and very friendly, very nice people. Yeah, there are a few people, the odd couple that are maybe not so wonderful, that aren't so crazy about foreigners, but I'll say those are fewer than in other parts of the country that I've been in, or even other countries, period. There are times when I've noticed that being, I hate to put it in these terms, but American passing, because I'm half American, half Brazilian. And if individuals perceive me as American, they treat me one way. But if they know I have any kind of Brazilian connection, there have been a few stores in town that I've noticed where I've been treated differently. Like, for example, there is a cocktail bar here that I like it. I thought it was a really cool place. I'm not a drinker anyway, but if I was going to go out with friends, that would be one of my preferred places because they had couches inside. There were times that I went where I was with Americans. We were treated very nicely, great service, super friendly. But then there was a couple times I went with Brazilians. The first time I went with my Brazilian friends, I didn't really think much about it because we were a bit of a large group. And I thought maybe they were just a little bit annoyed that we were a large group of people. Then I went back there one more time with a much smaller group of people, and I saw we were treated the exact same way, with this distaste for, these Brazilians. But then I went there with Americans, and we were treated fantastically by the exact same people, just speaking a different language. And I'll say there's maybe only 2 places where that's really happened to me here. So I would never say like, avoid this place if you're X, Y, or Z. I would say, look, if you're coming to Italy, there will be certain ways that you might get treated just because of where you're from. And even for Americans at times. But overall, people are generally quite nice here. Not that it's necessarily welcoming and warm like people might be down south, where like you'll get invitations to come to people's homes and to do this and to do that. But it's a little bit more reserved in many ways than what you might find. And so like even when people are thinking about moving to Italy, they're thinking about, I'm going to go and everybody's pizza, pasta, amore, friendly, family, great, crazy, big, loud. But that's not all of Italy. And that's not all Italians. You might find that people in the north are much more reserved than people in the south. And you might find even some people in the south are more reserved than others and less friendly and less warm and less welcoming. But it depends. You have to treat individuals as individuals. Sometimes I've seen people come to Italy and they're like, oh, all Italians and this and that. No, not all Italians, not all Americans, not all Germans, not all Brazilians. You have to treat an individual as an individual. Granted, there are some generalizations that you can make from time to time, but getting back to whether I could recommend it or not to live in Rovigo, I would say you have to really spend some time here to get to know it. And are you needing city life? Are you needing big city life? Or are you okay with living in a smaller place with maybe fewer things that are accessible? You have a lot going on here, but at the same time, it's limited. Whereas maybe if you were in a larger city, maybe an hour, 40 minutes away, or an hour and a half away, that you might have more going on, more options of places to go and things to do and things to try. That's something you would have to take into account. Moving here, it's not like moving to a village, like where you have maybe a couple of stores and some little old nonni like just making the pasta on the corner. No. Here it's very different. Here it's like it's like living in a small city. Like it's a small town that has some aspects of like living in a city. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense at all. It's like a shrunken city in a way. There are aspects of living here that are like living in a town, and the people that you see, like you always see the same people around. I've walked by the same group of old guys on the center piazza day after day for a couple of years now, and I recognize just about every face. And even walking around, you get to see who's what and where and how and why. And that's actually something that's really nice, is that there's a familiarity. You know who's who to an extent, even if you don't know them by name, even if you've never said hi to them or they've never said hi to you. If you go to like the same places over and over again, you'll start becoming friendly potentially. If you are out there, if you put yourself out there, there are people in this town that I am friendly with, and that they have a store or a restaurant or something, and we interact because they happen to be along the route that I take to get to where I'm going. So from that perspective, it's nice. Another nice aspect of living here in Rovigo is that we actually have pretty good internet. We have fiber in most of the city. A lot of the city, I think, is still fiber to the cabinet, but they're introducing fiber to the house in more places as time goes on. I think already on the main street of the town, it's almost all FTTH, but they're making more of some of the main areas FTTH as time goes on. They're still upgrading the town. I'm definitely not going to say it's the fastest internet, but pretty respectable speeds, I would say, without a doubt. And so as somebody who mostly works online, but still has to go out from time to time, it's reliable enough. There have been a couple times when it's gone down for an evening or a night, or maybe the electricity's gone out a couple of times, but overall, for the most part, it's fine. I mean, the longest that there was ever an electric outage here that I've experienced personally was maybe an hour. The other times it was maybe like 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum. Not that it happens a ton here, but during the summer when people are maybe using a little bit more electricity, or in the winter when people are using more electricity as well, like more than average, then you might have that dip that wouldn't be like crazy abnormal, at least from my experience in the couple of different apartments that I've lived in here in Rovigo. So all in all, what I would have to say when talking about Rovigo, can I recommend it? Yes and no. If you are somebody who's contacted me because you are thinking about getting your Italian citizenship by descent there and going through the process there, then I think it's a very interesting location if you're working with ICA. They have not paid me to say that. They don't know I'm saying any of this, but because of the location and because of their familiarity with that municipality, then I could say, like, if you are working with them and they're helping you to get everything set up there, fantastic place. If you're thinking you're looking for a small city that you want to bring children to live in, It could be an interesting little town. You might find more of an international influence or even more English-speaking kids or American kids if you go 20 kilometers south down to Ferrara. And there's, I believe, an international school for kids there. And so I would maybe look at that. If you are maybe retired or thinking about where to maybe spend the rest of your life as an older person, I would say potentially, again, there could be something interesting there. But it's very much a place where you need to be able to spend some time before making a final decision about it. I would say really anywhere. It doesn't matter the location. And that's why when I make these episodes about can I recommend something or should you or shouldn't you, it's really up to you in the end. It's not something that I can say is a good decision or a bad decision. I can say I liked it for my lifestyle and it met my needs, but I can't say that it's going to meet the needs for everybody else out there. For what I like in life and what I enjoy in life, there were some very nice things about it. Now, having left and being able to look at Rovigo in a little bit of a different light, comparing it and contrasting it to where I am now, I can say that my new location has certain aspects of life and what it can present that I prefer over Rovigo. But if we're talking about a small Italian town, it's nice. It's a very pleasant place to be if you're okay with quiet. I'm somebody who very much enjoys quiet. There can be times where Rovigo is a little too quiet. It's very underrated in my opinion, but at the same time, I still am not going to say it's like the perfect place, the most amazing place, but I liked it, personally speaking. If you are thinking about moving to Italy, take a pilot trip at some point. Visit different locations, spend time there. I would even say spend quite a long time if you can, because just to go to a place for a couple of days, you're not going to get like the best feel of what it realistically is like to live there. If you spend a week or two there, then if you're in an Airbnb, for example, and you have a kitchen available to you, then you'll get a feel of going to the supermarket, finding the stores, and in a place like Rovigo, a lot of those are very easy to find. There are some hidden gems that you need some pointers to look for and a little bit of somebody to kind of get you going in the right direction. But overall, I would even say many of these things about Rovigo that I would say about a lot of other small towns, other than say that it's kind of more up and coming, that there's things to do. And as far as a city that size, and if you are needing more activity, there are plenty of other places that you might want to consider first. One place that I used to hear a lot about from the people in Rovigo, like younger people, maybe professionals or young professionals looking to get out, they would be more interested in going to Verona. But of course, it doesn't matter where you are on earth. Young people are always going to say, oh, we don't like it here. We want to go someplace else, this and that and the other. Italy is no different. Italy, I would say, even almost sometimes more so do you hear and see that from younger people because of the working situation in the country is not the best. And when I say the working situation, I mean finding a job. Once you get a job, depending on the type of job, I've talked about this in previous episodes, you can get a temporary contract or a more long-term contract. And once you've got that long-term contract, that indeterminate contract, you've got a lot of job security there. And even to be able to get a credit card or a loan for a home, all of these things completely change as soon as you have any kind of contract for work. If you have a temporary contract, then yeah, it's going to be difficult in Italy, regardless of your location. Or if, for example, like John Deere, I believe, has a base very close to, or an Italian partner, very close to Rovigo, I think on the southern part of the city. Or if somehow you get attached to Amazon and end up getting a job through them, and you're looking at this area to live in, it's a pleasant place to be. It's quiet. But I would say, especially if you're closer to the center, like you can be anywhere, like literally in minutes by foot. It could almost be even longer if you have a bike to get anywhere or a scooter. And It's not necessarily a place that I would recommend to somebody who's young and single, but I maybe could say if you are going there specifically for work and you have a family. But if you are single and your career is your real focus, yeah, look, you could make a life for yourself there. I know I did. I wouldn't say it was my perfect place, but it was good for me. And also even considering some of the situations surrounding 2020, of course, because this is YouTube, using certain language and being specific about certain terms. Yeah. Anyway, different subject for a different day. But to have that experience in this smaller place was actually something that I kind of was grateful for at the time. I was grateful for, because we didn't have the same long lines to get into supermarkets that you saw in some other places. There were some cities in the country that had like 45 minutes, an hour, depending on where you were, like long waits, because there were only so many people allowed in the supermarket at a time. That situation is different now, but to have that experience in a smaller area and to be able to not have the rush of a city, of a big city, was very nice in that situation. And especially now that we're living in a world that's different, to say the least, there are some of those aspects where you do feel like you can have a little bit more space to, I hate to use the term breathe in this because I'm not meaning it literally with the face coverings and so on. But in a sense, you do have a little bit more space there, especially if you do get a little bit outside of the center. There are some places where you can have a yard and everything, and it wouldn't be like crazy expensive. But again, I wouldn't say that I would recommend buying anywhere right after you arrive. Definitely not. I think you need to spend time there before you can make an investment. If you are investing in yourself, your life, in a home, whatever it is, you need to be fully aware of everything that comes along with it. Again, this is one of the reasons why I do this project, Not Your Average Globetrotter, because it's not about being the average Globetrotter, going to the average places and doing the average things. It's about spending time to really get to know beyond the pizza, pasta, and amore. I love the pizza, pasta, and amore, don't get me wrong. And even since leaving Italy, I have still continued with some of my pizza and pasta and amoreing. Turning that into a verb somehow. I think I've done that 2 weeks in a row now, turning something into... Anyway, doesn't matter. It's really important to have a handle on what reality is, because we all build up these ideas about, wow, I'm going to be in this new place and doing this new thing with this new people and all this great stuff, and my life is going to be so different. But wherever you go, you take yourself with you. Some of the problems that you may have faced back in your home country could be some of the same problems that you face in your new country. But I think that is where I'm going to leave things off for now. So thank you all so very much for joining me for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. Thank you so much to the patrons who help to make content like this possible on a regular basis. And of course, because it is the holly jolly season, you can still get those gifts, those stocking stuffers for yourself or a loved one through store.rafaeldifuria.com or rafaeldifuria.com/NYAG Gear. If you're on YouTube, of course, all the links will be down below in the more info section. But of course, as always, stay safe and healthy out there. I'm Rafael Di Furia, and I will see you all next time. Later.